Good morning and welcome to Ask the Experts. It's an award-winning daily series that runs every day from 8:30 in the morning to 9 o'clock to help small businesses. If you've got any questions, you can ask them in the comments on the live feed. And if you need any more advice, you can join the official Intuit QuickBooks SMB community group on Facebook. Accountants and business experts are on hand 24/7 to help you. During this live session, we're going to be running a poll, so please do engage with it, and at the end, I'll be revealing the results. So I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'm going to talk about today's topic, which is all about new ways to create buzz. So my name's Andrew Bloch. I'm a PR expert, and I've been working in the PR industry for, over 25 years now. I started my career at an agency called Lynn Franks. If any of you have seen the TV show Absolutely Fabulous, that was based on Lynn and her agency, and it was a pretty crazy place to work. I went on to set up my own company, Frank, which I co-founded nearly 21 years ago. And Frank has grown to become one of the biggest consumer agencies in the UK, looking after some of the nation's biggest brands and lots of campaigns that no doubt you will have seen or heard about. I stepped back from Frank to move into a non-executive position last year, and I now run Andrew Bloch and Associates, which is a consultancy working mainly in the marketing services space, and I help brands and agencies with their PR and their communication needs, as well as doing work in the M&A space and various other advisory roles. I'm also the PR advisor to Lord Sugar, and I've looked after him for the last 20 years, and I look after all of his business affairs. And I also look after the apprentice winners. Once they win the show, they come off it. And my role is to help them create credible businesses and make that transition from being TV personalities into business people in their own rights. So that's a little bit about me. Today's topic is all about new ways to create buzz. So I thought probably, the best starting point is to talk about what buzz actually is. So I guess, my definition of buzz is it's all about creating conversations that take over and essentially do your best marketing for you. And I've always been a firm believer in PR. There's no point in doing PR for the sake of PR. We are bombarded by commercial messages day in, day out, from the second we wake up on our screens of our phones, on the TV, in the newspapers, when we walk out the house. There's adverts everywhere. And as consumers, we have sort of naturally trained ourselves to switch off to those messages and just ignore them. So if you're going to do PR that matters, you need to cut through the noise and cut through the clutter. And I think we all know that word of mouth is the best form of marketing that you can do. And so if you can create campaigns that will generate word of mouth, whether that word of mouth is around the water cooler, the taxi driver telling you about something he's seen, heard, or read, whether it's engagement online, that is the most effective way that you can get your message across. Probably what is important to say is that buzz can come from anywhere, and it's channel neutral. So when you're starting to try and come up with a campaign for your company, your organization, your clients, don't think about the channels that you want to be on. How can we create a great campaign for Twitter? How can we do something in PR? What advert can we do? Think about the creative idea in its own right, because actually the most important thing is to come up with a great idea. And once you have that idea, you can figure out what is the best channel to bring that idea to life. People often ask me, how do you come up with ideas? Are there techniques? Are there ways to generate campaigns that have buzz within them? And over the years, when I was at Frank, we developed this, I guess, sort of starting points or triggers to get your brain thinking in the right way about buzz. So I'm going to talk you briefly through those different triggers so you can start to think about different ways that you can create buzz for your business. So the first thing we would always do is look at the conventions of an industry. And generally, when you look at an industry, whether that be travel, beauty, food, motoring, there are ways that that industry markets themselves. They tend to follow a set pattern of techniques and ways of talking about their products within that industry. What we would always try and do is take learnings from other industries and look at the conventions of that industry and see how they can be applied. So if you're a brand that is, I don't know, say a food brand, rather than look at all the other food brands and what they do, why don't you look at the beauty industry, the fashion industry, and look at some of those techniques and see if you can apply those techniques to your industry to create something different that's going to stand out, that's going to get attention. The second thing that we would do is look at perceptions of your industry, your product and your brand. So how do people currently perceive you? There's no point in telling them what they already know. You have to look at how you can change those perceptions, how you can be disruptive, how you can break the norm and the typical way of thinking. The third thing we'll always look at is visualization and imagery, and how can you bring your message to life in the most powerful way visually. Often the best technique for that is to try and capture one single image for the story or the campaign that you're trying to get across. It's kind of, I guess, common wisdom that a picture paints 1,000 words, and if you've got a strong image, that is going to really help your message stand out, help recall, help generate bigger amount of space and attention to the message that you're trying to get across. And then the final trigger that we'll always look at is the zeitgeist and what's going on in the world. It's often a lot easier for a brand to join conversations that are already happening as opposed to try and create conversations of your own. And in order to do that, you have to have a good understanding of popular culture and what people are talking about. And you have to look at how you can bring your brand into that conversation. The other thing that's really important is to look at what's going on in the world in terms of trends, not necessarily specific to your industry, but also more generally what's happening in the world of music, fashion, TV. And perhaps even more importantly than that is trying to look at what the zeitgeist will be. Where is the world going? What are the trends we're heading towards? What are we going to be talking about in 6 weeks, in 6 months? And try and get ahead of the curve so that you can put your brand, your product, your service, your message into that conversation. So those are the sort of 4 triggers. The final part to think about is trying to get an understanding of what makes a great story. I guess you could call these kind of buzz filters. It's no point having a great idea if no one wants to talk about that. And if you look at stories that generate buzz, stuff that gets talked about on social media, stuff that gets talked about in the newspaper, generally there are about, I don't know, maybe a dozen or so different things that time and time again will get written about. So that might be the use of celebrity. It might be reality. It might be surprise. Could be controversy, or in lots of cases, invented controversy, and the media love invented controversy. It could be around purpose or charity or social causes. Again, that's something that time and time again will get talked about. Sex is always a very easy way to get talked about. Using humour. And then I guess finally, sort of implausibility and what I would call sort of man bites dog. No one is interested in a dog biting a man. If a man bites a dog, all of a sudden you've got something that creates attention. So I've gone through that pretty quickly, but essentially, the outtake is when you're coming up with a campaign, a marketing campaign, PR campaign, social media campaign, always think about whether what you're doing is likely to cause a reaction. And if it isn't, then question yourself and ask yourself, what is the point of doing this? Ultimately, everything that you're doing in terms of your PR and your marketing needs to have an ROI, it needs to have an impact on your business. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it. And if you're going to put your efforts into creating a campaign that is just wallpaper and won't get talked about, then what's the point in doing it? So try and use those different triggers that I've talked about to get your brain thinking in a different way, being a little bit more disruptive, and then you're going to be able to come up with campaigns that have that element of buzz within them and create the reaction that you want for your brand. So that's your kind of, 10 minutes introduction to buzz and some ways to think about buzz. I'm going to now take some questions that have come in. So I haven't seen these questions before. I'm just going to take them live. Please, if you haven't put a question in, start them coming in. The first question is from Ariane, I hope I pronounced that right, which comes through on DM on Instagram. And Ariane says, good PR takes time. What if I do not have the luxury of time? Can PR not work in that scenario? Is marketing and advertising the only means to generate buzz in a short period of time? Respectfully, I would disagree with that. I think good PR can happen in moments, and some of the best campaigns that you see are often very, very reactive to the news agenda. And one of the greatest ways of creating buzz is to hijack the news. At Frank, we call that agendaneering. How can you commandeer the news agenda? And I think the beauty of social and digital is that it is so quick, and obviously, it just takes seconds to get a message out to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. If you can build your own channels, if you can create something that has that sort of viral effect to it. Of course, not all great PR is tactical. Some of it is much more planned, much more strategic. But I would say that is the same in all forms of marketing, whether it be advertising, digital media, sponsorship. There's a balance between quick tactical wins and longer term strategic PR, which, sometimes if you're trying to change perceptions, trying to build someone's reputations, trying to eliminate the damage that potentially has been caused to a brand, sure, you can't do that overnight. That takes consistency. But in terms of quick wins and overnight success stories, I don't think anything is more effective than clever and good PR. Next question is from Fauni, also on Instagram. How do I measure the value of PR coverage? I'm a tech company and believe in digital marketing as it's trackable and measurable. My distrust with PR is that I'm not able to measure it. PR should always be measurable, and especially if you're in the digital space, PR is easier to measure than ever. So ultimately, what you're trying to do is to look at the impact of PR on your business metrics. So I don't know what your business is, but now using PR, it really is extremely trackable. So you can see the levels of not only just engagement and the buzz that you're creating, but also how news pieces have driven hits to your website, have led to downloads of an app, have led to sales. It's more measurable than it's ever been, especially in the online space. And there's great bits of software you can use that do this automatically. I'm an advisor to a company called Propel, which is a PR management tool, and it's a piece of software. And actually, what you can do on that is you can create a media list of the media that you want to go to. You can send it out via your own email or your Gmail. And then what it will do is track the whole journey of that story. So how many people have opened your email? How many people have covered that story? How many people have read that story and gone from that story to your website? How many people have gone from the website to download, to buy, to purchase? And, that to me is an invaluable tool for PR people. It's not, when you're dealing in performance marketing, you can talk about the cost per acquisition of a customer. PR previously hasn't been able to do that as accurately, and as a result, sometimes loses out to other marketing disciplines. Now PR can prove itself, and it can show how it can create exponential difference to your business. And any PR company that isn't willing to measure what they're doing, that isn't willing to put KPIs against their campaigns, really shouldn't be getting any work in the first place. Every good PR person should be happy to be completely accountable for the work that they're doing. Next question, Bilkis from Instagram. What should be the ultimate goal of a successful PR campaign? I think I just answered that, really. I think the ultimate goal of any PR campaign is to deliver a result for the business. And when you're briefing a PR company or starting to think about a PR campaign, actually the first thing you need to do is sit down and think about, what do I want this campaign to achieve? And then once you've figured out what that ultimate goal is, and it might be more than one goal, you know, a campaign can achieve more than one thing at the same time, then you work backwards and you track the metrics that are going to allow you to prove that you've achieved that. So I talked about some of the digital measures. Often a lot of PR is about changing perceptions, imagery, views of a company or a product or a person. So in that case, what you need to do at the beginning of the campaign is take a benchmark of where you're at. You know, what is the brand awareness? What is the current opinion? And then you can track that throughout your campaign. And if your objective is to change perceptions in one direction, then you can look at that change and look at how you've achieved that over time. It might be about getting a specific message through. So if you're trying to communicate one thing, then you can look at previously how many people associated that messaging with your company, with your brand, with your product, and then track the difference of that throughout your campaign. But the goal is always going to be slightly different from client to client, but it should always be related to a business KPI. And as I said right at the beginning when I spoke, there is no point in doing PR for the sake of doing PR. Melissa from Twitter on direct message. Hi, Andrew. You've been involved in many out-of-the-box ideas for your clients. In a world filled with a multitude of content and ads across all media, how do I come up with ideas that stand out? Is there a method or formula that can be adopted as a best practice? Thanks for that question. You might have sent it in before I told you about my method or formula for doing it. And I think, you know, a lot of people say to me, I'm not creative. I can't come up with ideas. I don't believe in that at all. I think everyone has creative ability within them. And actually you just have to open your mind and start thinking. And, you know, the methodology that I talked through of playing around with those 4 different triggers essentially was something that myself and Graham, the other founder of Frank, came up with to help people within our company start to think in a different way. For me and for Graham, it was always a process that was pretty natural. We just sat in a room and we chatted, and it was the way that our minds naturally worked. But we realized that, you know, creativity within an organization can't sit with one person. It has to go throughout the organization. So we kind of developed these triggers as a way of helping other people open their minds. But, you know, I'm a great fan of, when you're trying to brainstorm and come up with ideas, is not just bringing in people within your agency, but bringing in people that think about things from different perspectives. We'd often brainstorm, and I still do, sort of bringing in, I don't know, potentially like the finance team, the office manager. I'll often speak to my kids about ideas. It's really important to try and have a diversity of thinking. Especially sort of in London PR agencies, there is a way of thinking. We live in a certain place and area. We have preconceived opinions and ideas, and that isn't necessarily representative of how the rest of the country and the rest of the world thinks. And you have to have a diversity of thinking when you're brainstorming. It was one of the reasons why, when I was running my agency, that we had different offices in different places just to come up with that diversity of thinking. So everyone will find their own methods, their own formulas, and their own best practice, so to speak. But I would encourage just bringing in different people. It's sometimes quite hard to come up with ideas on your own, so group thinking can often lead to great ideas. And the key to a good brainstorm is listening. And often more junior members of the team won't be able to come up with a fully formed idea, but they will be able to give you the nugget of something that, with your experience, you can build on it and turn it into something more fully formed. Kaharu from Twitter, direct message. How do you think the role of marketing, communications, and PR will change in the immediate future? It's a good question. I mean, the pace of PR and marketing communications is evolving rapidly. But essentially, the skill set of what I started out doing 25 years ago hasn't changed. What's changed is technology, new forms of communication, the ability to be able to speak directly to consumers. And there's new technology and channels sort of emerging all the time. I mean, the latest one is Clubhouse, which I'm still trying to figure out as a route for brands and a route for people to communicate their messaging. No doubt there'll be something else in the future. But the principles of great PR never changes. It's more about the methodology for doing it. And I think, you also see trends in terms of the importance of social purpose, and the importance of personal branding, and the founders of big companies being accountable and representative of their brand. So all of these kind of trends are emerging. I don't see anything, round the corner that is significantly going to change the role of PR. But as the world gets more cluttered and these messages that we see just continue to increase, the need for creative PR and effective communication is only going to become more and more and more important. Tim from Instagram. Being an entrepreneur, have you learned anything about yourself? I've learned so much about myself. I think it's when you're in the world of PR and marketing, it's pretty relentless and fast-paced, and often you don't have the time to sort of sit back and reflect. I mean, of course, I've made lots of mistakes over my career, and hopefully I've learned from those mistakes. And if I were to do the same thing again, I would approach it slightly differently. When I stepped back from Frank last year and moved into a non-exec role, it forced me to reflect a bit about myself, in a couple of ways, really. I mean, professionally, I had to ask myself the question, what am I good at? What am I not good at? And what do I enjoy? And what don't I enjoy? And that was what sort of shaped my future direction of where I wanted to be. I wanted to be focusing on my strengths, and I wanted to be doing things that I enjoyed. And I think also personally, I just took that moment in time to think about, I won't go too deep on it, but just what's important in life. And I think when you're an entrepreneur, when you found a business, it's completely all-consuming, and it does take over really every second of your waking life. You eat, sleep, and breathe your business. There's an emotional connection. And I think I realized there's more to life than work, and the importance of family and spending time with your kids. And I made a promise to myself that I didn't want to be the dad that wasn't there to pick their kid up from school or watch them in the school play or see them play football. So work-life balance, I think it took me quite a long time to realize how important it is, but also how to control it. So being in control of your own destiny. So I think as an entrepreneur, you're continually learning. It's a continual learning process, and you've got to keep pushing yourself and going into new areas, doing new things, taking yourself out your comfort zone. And that's how you learn. To do stuff that you can do with your eyes closed is just boring and not self-fulfilling. Alexander from Facebook Live. I've just set up my wine collecting business, and I'm trying to disrupt a very traditional industry to capture a modern audience who are using media and digital a great deal. where are the best places to find new customers and people? I would think, probably one of the best places is to look at where people are already talking about wine and drinking wine. Although if you're trying to disrupt it, maybe you want to enter new areas, new industries. So also think about your audience, their mindset. Again, I don't particularly believe that you should target people by their age, where they live. It's about mindset. So understand who it is you're trying to reach, how they think, what else they're interested in, and then go into those spaces to talk about them and tell them why you're different. If you're disrupting the wine industry, then have some fun with it. Be a challenger brand to the big wine brands. If you're going, I don't really know enough about your business, but if you're trying to disrupt the conventions, then make sure you attack the established industry and get attention by winding them up and taking some of their share of voice. Esme from Twitter. Hello, Andrew. As time goes on, we see more and more influencers pop up and are used by brands for their marketing as it's adopted, particularly on social media. What would you say the advantages of paying an influencer to get behind your brand is? Is it worth doing for my business or not? It's an excellent question. The role of influencers, it might feel like something new, but actually we've been using influencers in marketing for years and years, whether they be traditional celebrities or experts. For me, it's not necessarily who they are, it's how you use them. Has to be authentic, has to be believable. Just paying someone to hold up a product and say this is great is not going to make a difference. The value of using an influencer is they speak with their own voice, they've got an engaged fan base, they can do something particularly well. So I think carefully about it. If I would say, if you're going to pay them, try and structure something that isn't just a cash payment. Try and incentivize them. So, if you've got a product, build in a referral link so that they're incentivized for any customers they send your way. And that way, that you're basically aligning your objectives. If they do a good job, they get rewarded. I would avoid big cash amounts for influencers, and I wouldn't rely completely on influencers, but as one particular sort of aspect to use within your marketing mix, then yes, using influencers can be effective. I'm afraid that is the last question that I've got time to cover today, but I wanted to go to the poll quickly. The results are in, and the question was, have you ever sacrificed anything for your employees? Guess I'm a little bit surprised by these results. 33% of you said yes, and a massive 67% said no, they've never sacrificed anything for their employees. I think if you really thought about it, you probably have sacrificed more than you thought. And when I think about it in terms of sacrifice, I don't necessarily think about, giving up a bonus or taking a salary reduction or something like that. I think more about all the things you do to support them. Every time you drop something that you're doing yourself to help someone else, every time you stay late to support them, I think you're constantly making, or a good boss will be constantly sacrificing stuff for their employees, probably without even thinking about it. I think it becomes second nature, and they certainly don't think about it in terms of sacrifice. They think about it in terms of helping and supporting and just being a good boss. So I think people could probably change their opinion if they thought about it in that light. So on that note, thank you all for tuning in today. If you've got any questions, please do get in touch with the QuickBooks support team, or you can contact me. You can find me on LinkedIn, you can find me on Twitter, on Clubhouse. Not that hard to find. Coming up on Ask the Expert tomorrow is Aaron Patrick, who's head of accounts at Bofix, and he's got a brilliant YouTube channel called Aaron Patrick, the QuickBooks Chat, where he gives you a tour into the world of QuickBooks Online. So tune in tomorrow to get advice on how to prepare your business for post-lockdown. Yep, it is coming soon. Don't forget to join the official Intuit QuickBooks SMB group on Facebook. Accountants and business experts are on hand 24/7. So thank you so much. I've really enjoyed answering your questions today. Some brilliant questions. Hopefully you've learned a little bit about Buzz and how you can apply it to your business. Hope you all have a great day. Thank you very much.